Hey guys, Mosa here, and today I'm bringing you my Week 16 power rankings of the NFL. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Now, let's kick it off with dead last, the Chicago Bears at 4-10. They just took on the Vikings and lost, and will take on the Detroit Lions this upcoming Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. Now, when it comes down to it, the Chicago Bears, they're done. Obviously, they've been eliminated a long time ago, but still, the Bears are done. Caleb Williams probably is going to keep on starting, but they're not going to keep on winning. They are going to keep on losing just like they did with the Vikings on Monday, but in the end, there is an upside to Caleb Williams getting a new head coach, and this head coach possibly helping him in the future. Now, moving on to the Carolina Panthers, who are 3-11. They just took an L from the Cowboys and will take on the Arizona Cardinals this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Panthers, they're going to really have a potential to be a top 5 team in the draft, at least. But I don't think they're going to get the number 1 overall pick. I think that's in between New York and Las Vegas. But disregarding that, honestly, we've seen some good from their quarterback. Obviously, he's done a relatively decent job, but it's not enough. I think that, honestly, Bryce Young could do a lot more, but he is developing. Most likely next year that they're probably going to have a very good team for Bryce, and I think that he could be a maybe not top 5 or top 10, but maybe a top 15 quarterback in the next season. Now, moving on to the Tennessee Titans, who are 3-11. They just took an L from the Bengals and will take on the Colts this coming Sunday. Now, also eliminated from playoff contention, the Titans, they are going to have to look for a new quarterback. I don't think Will Levis is the option. Obviously, Mason Rudolph isn't either. I think that they're going to have to look for a quarterback, not in this draft, but in the next one. Maybe in the one after that. Maybe the one that Arch Manning is the quarterback that is in the draft, maybe that will be the one the Titans will be selecting their quarterback. In the end, I think that the Titans could have done better if they kept Mike Vrabel. I think that it wasn't his fault for how the Titans have been. But I think if Vrabel was still there, he could have actually done a little bit more with the Titans. Maybe not made the playoffs, but definitely pushed them to a winning season, at least a 9 to potentially 8-win season. And yeah, I don't see much success with the Titans, obviously this year, the next year as well, but maybe the year after that, you'll see some success. Now, moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 3-11. They just took an L from the New York Jets and will take on the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas on Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Jaguars, obviously they're going to pick Travis Hunter in the draft if they so can. Because I believe that if they get the 2nd or 3rd overall pick, the first two, which are Las Vegas and New York most likely, will select quarterbacks at the minimum. Maybe Hunter is off the board with either one, or maybe they both select quarterbacks. But if Hunter drops to 3 and the Jaguars are at 3, then you can guarantee that they're going to take Travis Hunter as a potential cornerback. I think that they'll go corner when it comes to Travis Hunter. Maybe he'll go Iron Man and play both positions, wide receiver and corner. But I expect him to be drafted as a cornerback rather than a receiver. To be honest, the Jaguars might be a good fit if he goes corner. Now, moving on to the New York Giants at 2-12. They will be going up against the Atlanta Falcons this Sunday, and they just took a massive L from the Baltimore Ravens last Sunday. Now, when it comes to New York Giants, they are picking a quarterback. There is no doubt in my mind, whether it be Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, or Shedeur Sanders, doesn't matter. Whether they get the 1st overall pick, if it's the 1st, they're picking Shedeur Sanders. If they don't get the 1st and Las Vegas picks Shedeur, then most likely we'll be seeing that the the New York Giants will be taking Carson Beck, potentially 2nd overall. In the end, if they go also with Travis Hunter, they might go corner for him. Otherwise, this team will most likely pick a quarterback with the 2nd or 1st overall pick without a shadow of a doubt. Now moving on to the New England Patriots, 3-11. They just took an L from the Arizona Cardinals and will take on the Buffalo Bills this upcoming Sunday. Now when it comes to the Patriots, they are done. Gerard Mayo isn't done. I think he'll stay for a little while longer. I think it's just that they're changing systems, so there's most likely that reason, which is understandable. Next year, they're going to be selecting some new offensive linemen, some new defenders to help out Drake May and the defense as well. But in the end, this is what's going to happen. They're going into a rebuilding phase with Drake May as their franchise quarterback. Without a shadow of a doubt, Drake May has done decently for the Patriots. He's not Rookie of the Year, but he's definitely a quarterback that, if in the right situation, he'll win for you. Now, moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-12. They just took an L from the Atlanta Falcons and will face off against the Jacksonville Jaguars this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, they're picking Shedeur Sanders or Carson Beck, maybe even Quinn Ewers, but I highly doubt it. But they're picking a quarterback with their first pick. If not, and they go someone else, it's Travis Hunter. There's absolutely no reason this team should, in fact, go for a quarterback. Go for a cornerback over a quarterback because they need a quarterback. Aiden O'Connell is not the guy. Gardner Minshew is not the guy. You've got an opportunity to get Shedeur, then you better get him. But you better work this offseason to get him a good offensive line and a good defense so that you can basically have a playoff year and then, for the years to come, maybe even Super Bowl runs. Now, moving on to the Cleveland Browns, who are 3-11, took a loss from the Kansas City Chiefs and will face off against the Bengals this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Browns, honestly, they are not good. Not at all with Deshaun Watson. They are not good with Jameis Winston either. I'm not saying they're going to pick a quarterback, most likely because they think, okay, we got Deshaun Watson. We'll just get him back to his Houston Texans days. No, you're not. He's not the same guy, and the baggage on him is too heavy. But the Browns ownership won't care and keep him on the roster due to his contract unless they can void it somehow. So, regardless of that, I think the Browns are definitely going to be a top 10 or top 5 draft pick. But they won't select a quarterback most likely. They'll most likely pick someone to protect and or pick someone on the defensive side for the Cleveland Browns. So I'm realistically saying that, yeah, they're not going to get rid of Deshaun Watson, even though they definitely should. Now, moving on to the New York Jets, who just took a win from the Jacksonville Jaguars and will take on the Los Angeles Rams this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes down to it, I actually believe that the New York Jets will indeed get rid of, well, not this year. Next year, they'll probably start him anyways, but that's Aaron Rodgers. I think getting rid of him and selecting a quarterback second, first, or third round, and then develop him behind Aaron Rodgers is the best option because you got a quarterback who's been a Super Bowl champion and a league MVP multiple times. So why not have him teach the guy who replaces him? And I think that that's definitely what the Jets should do. But if they're going to do that, well, let's just see, because they're not getting a top 5 draft pick, or maybe they'll get a top 10, but not top 5. So they won't have a chance. Maybe Quinn Ewers could be on the Jets, or, well, if they trade up, maybe they can get Shedeur Sanders, but I highly doubt they'd trade up that high, because they'd need to get the number 1 overall for that. Now, moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, who are 6-8 and took an L from the Denver Broncos, while they'll take on the Titans this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes down to the Indianapolis Colts, they are still in the playoff hunt. They still have a chance, a very, very low one at that. But besides the point, 3 wins and they're 9-8. They have a chance of the playoffs, not as a division champion, but still playoffs nonetheless. The Colts are realistically the only AFC South team who rivals the Texans, and that is a very large margin that we're talking about. So they'll most likely be looking for a wild card spot. And yeah, this team could actually do that depending on their next 3 games and also on the other teams ahead of them. Because realistically, they are not the top team with a 6-8 record. I believe there are a few teams above them, but it all really depends, like I just said, on not only their own 3 games that they have left, but the 3 games of the teams ahead of them, such as I believe one is, well, Denver's in. That's no question. Chargers as well. Realistically, some of those teams that are 9 wins have to lose out in order for the Colts to have a chance. Now, moving on to New Orleans Saints at 5-9, they just took an L from the Washington Commanders, and they will take on the Green Bay Packers on Monday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Saints, they are most likely eliminated by this week. The Cowboys, whether they win or lose, will also most likely be eliminated from playoff contention. I do not, in fact, see any of these 2 teams actually making it. And honestly, I don't think much of the New Orleans Saints, at least at this part of the season. They've lost their car. They started multiple quarterbacks at this point, both Jake Hayner and obviously the rookie Spencer Rattler. But they've also gone with losing Taysom Hill, if I'm not mistaken. But realistically, I don't see much coming from the Saints. And honestly, their season is over. Whether they're eliminated from playoff contention or not, it most likely this week they will be eliminated. Now, moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, who are 6-8. They just took a win from the Carolina Panthers and will take on the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, honestly, just like the Saints, they will not make the playoffs. They will indeed lose a few more games and will end up maybe with 10-9 losses on the year. Honestly, this has not been a good year for Dallas, and honestly, it's very, 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 very bad for the Cowboys right now. As honestly, if they keep doing what they've been doing throughout this year for the rest of their years, for at least the time that Jerry Jones is the owner, because there's no way I'm thinking that Jerry Jones is actually going to give up being the GM. I think his way of building a team no longer works, and it's the reason why the team is like this. So realistically, as long as Jerry Jones is no longer in the decision making, I think that the Cowboys will do just fine. He can stay the owner, but hire a GM who knows how to build a team. Don't build it yourself, because this ain't the 90s anymore. Get into the 21st century, Jerry, because this team ain't making no Super Bowl anytime soon. Now, moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, we got the Falcons, who are 7-7, took a win from the Las Vegas Raiders, and will take on the New York Giants this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Falcons, they are right now neck and neck with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for that division. It is in between them two. They'll be starting their new quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., this season, starting this game. So we're finally going to be seeing Michael Penix in the NFL as a starter. Now, whether that works or not, that's besides the point. The point I'm making here is the Falcons need to win out. And Bucks, 2 losses at the minimum need to happen. Meaning that the Bucks need to lose 2 of their next 3 games in order for the Falcons to potentially make the playoffs as the division champions. Now, they could potentially make it as a wild card, but that's also very hard right now, as most of those teams are 9-win teams. So most likely, both the Bucks and the Falcons will have losing records, but one of those 2 losing records will be a division champion. Now, moving on to the Miami Dolphins, who are 6-8. They just took an L from the Houston Texans and will take on the San Francisco 49ers this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Dolphins need to do a lot more that they've been doing recently. They need to win out. That's one thing they need to do. They have no chance at the division. That's Buffalo's already. Miami's only way of making the playoffs is if they actually win out. And that also depends on the other teams who are 9-win teams right now, 8-win teams. They also need to either lose out or lose at least 2 games, depending on the team we're talking about, in order for the Dolphins to make it. The Dolphins are honestly, they are about a 40-some% chance of making the playoffs, in my opinion. So realistically, they are on a just they have to go up high while other teams are already at that high and just need to take one more step to make it in. And realistically, the Dolphins might actually not make it to the peak to get into the playoffs. Now on to the Arizona Cardinals, who are 7-7 and took a win from the New England Patriots, while they'll take on the Carolina Panthers this upcoming Sunday. Now, even though they won and they're now 7-7, that still is bad for them because the 6-8 49ers are right behind them, and the 2 teams ahead of them are both ahead by just 1 game, but both teams are ahead of them. Although I do believe that they would be ahead of LA, they would never be ahead of Seattle. Seattle's got 2 wins on them, and there's absolutely no way that we're going to be seeing the Arizona Cardinals actually be a division champion if Seattle has the same record. Seattle will win that division record-wise, and also the fact that they swept the Arizona Cardinals. So they have to win out, and they have to hope that both the Seattle Seahawks and, well, at least the Seattle Seahawks lose 2 games, while the Rams lose 1. As soon as that happens, Arizona wins the division and they're in the playoffs. But the chances of that happening are low. Now, moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals at 6-8. They just took a win from the Tennessee Titans and will take on the Cleveland Browns this upcoming, I think it's actually, this upcoming Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But in the end, the Bengals will have to win out. And that's the biggest part of their season right now, because if they don't win out, they lose at least 1 game, they're most likely out of the playoffs. Like, they're not winning no division. That's Pittsburgh, that's Baltimore, that's them. But when it comes to making the playoffs, regardless of that, the Bengals have to win out. That's what they have to do. And if they don't, then sayonara to the playoffs. Get ready for the offseason, Cincinnati. Now, moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, where they are 6-8. They just took an L on Thursday night against the LA Rams, and will take on the Miami Dolphins this upcoming Sunday at Hard Rock Stadium. Now, when it comes down to it, I honestly believe that the 49ers will, in fact, also be eliminated from playoff contention, just like the Arizona Cardinals. The Seahawks and Rams are realistically the only chances for playoffs in this division. The Niners are done. Although I do have them higher than the Cardinals, that's only because I feel like Arizona is still not that good, even though their record is better. I think their record doesn't say what they truly are. And realistically, the 49ers, honestly, they've gone from being top of the division to now just bottom of the division. And that's horrific for a 49er fan right now. But there is always light at the end of the rainbow. So I think what will happen is that they'll get better this offseason and will be back on track for 2025. Now, moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 8-6. They just took an L from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and will take on the Denver Broncos tomorrow on Thursday night. Now, when it comes down to the Los Angeles Chargers, I actually believe that the Chargers will do a great job to get to the playoffs, although they have to win against Denver and then win the rest of their games. Like, only one of those 2 teams have a 90% chance of winning the division, or not the division, but getting into the playoffs. And honestly, it's the team who beats the other in this Thursday night matchup. Like, obviously Kansas City has won the division, but who's going to follow KC into the playoffs? That is to be cold on Thursday night. But I think I'm leaning more into Denver than Los Angeles, as I believe Los Angeles, even though they're good they're not going to be as good as the Broncos. Now, moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 8-6. They just took a win from the LA Chargers, and they will take on the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Now, obviously, they're a game ahead of Atlanta, so they have the advantage in the division. They win 2 games, I believe, just 2, when they have the division. That's all the Buccaneers need. And realistically, I think the Falcons are at least going to lose 1 game. So, yeah, even if they didn't win out all of their games, I think 2 would be just enough to give the Buccaneers the division anyways. So that would be not only a winning season, but a potential playoff spot as the division champion. But yeah, disregarding that, I think that the Buccaneers are on their way to making the playoffs as the NFC South champions. Now, moving on to the Washington Commanders at 9-5. They just took a win from the Saints and will take on the Philadelphia Eagles in a must-win matchup. This is a must-win for the Washington Commanders. They win this, they have a chance still at obviously, I believe they only have 2 losses. The Philadelphia Eagles, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be 3 losses. Then 2 more, and the Washington Commanders obviously win out. That's all they need to potentially win the NFC East. Now, will they win the NFC East? I don't think so. But they'll make playoffs disregarding that, because honestly, the Washington Commanders are just that good this season. I think that they might have the opportunity to make the playoffs as a wild card and maybe as the top wild card team, depending on the teams that make playoffs ahead of them. Now on to my Seattle Seahawks, who are 8-6. They just took an L from the Green Bay Packers and will take on the Minnesota Vikings this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings and the Seattle Seahawks, that is a must-win for Seattle. If Los Angeles loses to the Jets, then that is most likely a chance for the Seahawks to be the number 1 team in the NFC West again. Now, due to the division record, realistically, the Week 18 matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and the LA Rams will be for the division, most likely. And honestly, I'm thinking that the Los Angeles Rams will indeed start crumbling a little, but the Seahawks will be just right behind them. It'll be a close matchup as all 3 teams are, well, I say all 3. Realistically, it's a tie between LA and Seattle. The Cardinals are 1 game behind, and the 49ers are 2 games behind the division leaders. Now, when it comes to it, I think Seattle and Los Angeles will do their best, but in the end, it's hard to make out who will come out on top. Now, on to the LA Rams, and we got the Rams 8-6. They took a win from the 49ers on Thursday night and will take on the New York Jets this upcoming Sunday. Now, when it comes down to it, they have to start winning, because even though they're tied with Seattle and they got the tiebreaker, I honestly believe that if the LA Rams lose out, the Seattle Seahawks will at least win, which is one of their games, which would be the final game against the Seahawks. If they both lose all their games prior to that Week 18 matchup, that will lead to a division championship in Week 18 for the NFC West. And I believe that the Seattle Seahawks are just there. They're close enough to take the win away from the LA Rams. But for now, honestly, they got Minnesota and New York to deal with at the moment. Now at number 10, we got the Denver Broncos, 9-5. They just took a win from the Colts and will take on the Chargers in a must-win game on Thursday Night Football. Now, this Broncos team with Bo Nix at quarterback has been incredible. This has been the best season for the Denver Broncos since Peyton Manning retired, and the best quarterback they've had since Peyton Manning. This is honestly the best season for Denver, and honestly, I expect more from the Broncos, not in the playoffs this year, but in future seasons, if this is what they're bringing to the table at the moment. Honestly, I expect potential Super Bowl or AFC Championship appearances from the Denver Broncos if, and only if, they can keep up the momentum. Not in this season. I don't think they'll make the AFC Championship in this season, but maybe next year and the year after that. Now at number 9, we got the Houston Texans, who are the AFC South champions at 9-5. They took down the Dolphins and will take on the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming Saturday. Now, when it comes to this team, the Houston Texans are definitely a playoff team, obviously, as they won their division. But will they win out the rest of their games? Because I don't think they have a chance at getting the number 1 seed. At most, they're getting the, I believe, maybe, first of all, you got AFC West, AFC North, and the AFC East. Honestly, you got Bills, Chiefs, and, Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens or Steelers. You realistically got a chance for 3rd or 4th in the playoffs, but realistically for me, I'm thinking the Texans are going to be the 4th team in the playoffs, while they'll still do a very good job, but they'll have to face up against the toughest wild card team of the playoffs. Now at number 8, we got the Baltimore Ravens. They are 9-5. They took down the Giants. Now they're going to have to face off against the Steelers on Saturday. This is for the division. The Ravens win, they take the lead, Steelers fall. But Steelers are already in the playoffs. So this is also a chance for Baltimore to make it into the playoffs. And honestly, I think that they have a very good chance on doing so. It all really depends on how good the defense of the Ravens will do against the Pittsburgh offense. Honestly, realistically, the thing you got to watch out for is who will come out on top in this game, because even if, let's say, one team, the tiebreaker will be won by Baltimore if they have the same record. So if Pittsburgh wins, they got the advantage. If Baltimore wins, they got the advantage if they're tied. So I think that the best case scenario for the Steelers, they win and they just clinch the division no matter what. Otherwise, they'll have to face a tough 2-game stretch where they have to then win out and hope that the Baltimore Ravens do not win out as well, because if they're both tied, like I said, the Ravens will win the division. Now at number 7, we got the playoff-bound 10-4 Pittsburgh Steelers, who just took an L from the Philadelphia Eagles, still made the playoffs regardless, and will take on the Ravens on Saturday. Now, when it comes down to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I honestly believe that the Steelers have one opportunity, and that one opportunity is to beat the Ravens. They win out all their games, and it doesn't matter if Baltimore does the same, they win the division. That's all Pittsburgh needs. So Pittsburgh, this is a must-win for you, and at the minimum, you win one more game. Because, let's say 2 games. You win 2 games, you end up 12-3. Let's say that Baltimore wins out. What happens? 12-5, 12-5, and the Steelers make it be at the same record because they already beat Baltimore. So I feel like that way the Steelers are more in favor of winning the division. But otherwise, they're going to have to win out, or if they lose, they need to hope that Baltimore loses and then win out the rest of their games in order to win the division just the same, because then, in that case, if Baltimore wins, they have the advantage in the division. Now, on to the Minnesota Vikings, who are playoff-bound, 12-2, and they beat the Chicago Bears on Monday night, while they'll take on the Seahawks this upcoming Sunday. Now, I believe that this is the time the Vikings will start crumbling. This is going to be a trap game against Seattle, and honestly, it's going to be a tough 3 games for them. They got to win out, in my opinion, to make it as the NFC North champions. They got to beat out, and they've got to hope, because if I'm not mistaken, they have the same record currently as Detroit. So this is going to be a tough matchup for the Minnesota Vikings to win the division, but even if they do so, whether it's a division championship or as a wild card, they will indeed lose in the first round of the playoffs. Now at number 5, we got the Green Bay Packers, 10-4. They took a win from my Seattle Seahawks on Sunday night, and they'll be taking on the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Green Bay Packers, they need to win out, obviously. But they would also need Detroit to lose out. And also the Minnesota Vikings. That happens, Green Bay is the NFC North champions. That is all they need. And honestly, this game against the New Orleans Saints is not only a must win, but it's a most likely win for the Green Bay Packers. I have no doubt in my mind that Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers would just steamroll over the New Orleans Saints. There's no chance that team wins, and they basically get a chance at the division title. Otherwise, they'll make the playoffs most likely as a wild card spot. Now, moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, who just took down the Cleveland Browns and will take on the Houston Texans. They are 13-1. Honestly, the AFC West champions, they dropped, in my opinion, not due to their win over the Browns. To be honest, I wouldn't have moved them because of a win or loss. If they had lost, I would have moved them down, definitely. But I would have kept them there if it wasn't for Buffalo and Philadelphia. These two teams are honestly very good, and obviously probably will be the champions of their divisions. One, Buffalo is already, but besides the point. The point is, Kansas City has been getting lucky all season long. 13 wins, more like 6 lucky to 7 lucky to 5 lucky wins for the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, I'm going to go say 5 wins. Those 5 wins, like Denver and all that, they should have been losses. Like, these Kansas City wins are just so lucky that you're seeing, like, how? And that's honestly what I believe when it comes to Kansas City. I think that Kansas City, honestly, even though they are 13-1, the best record in the National Football League, I'm putting them here at number 4. Now, at number 3, we got the 12-2 Detroit Lions. After coming off a loss to the Buffalo Bills, they will take on the Chicago Bears this Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Detroit Lions, they will be the division champions. Mark my words. Like, in the end, I think that they can win most of the games compared to what, obviously, Minnesota's right behind them record-wise. Honestly, they eliminate the Green Bay Packers with one more win. One more win, and that's it for Green Bay when it comes to the division. And let's say 2 wins and a loss for Minnesota. That's all she wrote for Minnesota winning the division. Detroit is honestly not only a division champion, but potentially even a number 1 seed. At the minimum, a number 2 seed. Now, moving on to the Buffalo Bills, the AFC East champions, 11-3. They just took a win from the Detroit Lions and will take on the New England Patriots in Foxborough on Sunday. Now, when it comes to the Buffalo Bills, I honestly believe the Bills will indeed be the potential. It all really depends on if Kansas City starts losing. If Kansas City wins one more game, Buffalo's most likely going to be the number 2 seed. But I think that they could actually get the number 1 seed, depending on Kansas City. If the Chiefs lose out and the Bills win out, that's all she wrote. But it's going to be a tough ride for the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be tough for the Chiefs to lose, especially due to the fact that sometimes they're getting these lucky wins. So, realistically, the number 2 seed is most likely for Buffalo. Now, at number 1, we got the 12-2, well, not division champions yet, but the potential division champion, Philadelphia Eagles, who just took down Pittsburgh Steelers and will take on the Washington Commanders this upcoming Sunday in, well, Maryland, but technically Washington. Well, you get the point. Point is, this team is going to win. They're going to win. They're going to be the NFC East champions. That doesn't mean Washington doesn't have a chance of getting in the playoffs regardless, but I think Philly's got it. They're the number 1 team, in my opinion, in the power ranking. But honestly, This team, even though I don't think they might not make it to the Super Bowl, they'll definitely be in the NFC Championship game, maybe either against Green Bay, Detroit, or maybe someone like Seattle. Highly doubt they would get up there all the way, but it's still a possibility. Now, that was it for this video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Tweet me any video ideas. Also, tell me down in the comments below, who do you think should be higher and who do you think should be lower? Tell me down in the comments below. Now, like this video if you liked it, subscribe, and hit the notification if you want more videos. And I'll see you guys next time.